So that's the beginning of The Sun is New Each Day, which is the first of Jim Dalton's 3 meditations on Heraclitus. Now, these were written in 2020 and I recorded them on my CD, The New Classical Ukulele. And since making the CD, I've been working with the composers of 3 of the pieces, including Jim, on a performing edition of the work. So the purpose of this video is, first of all, to introduce you to the music if you haven't heard the CD, or for you to assess perhaps whether it's a piece for you to play, to have a look at some of the technical requirements. And if you are actually working at the piece already, to give you a few pointers perhaps about some of the technical issues in the work. So in the first section of the piece, as you've heard, you've got quite a lot of slurred figuration. So the first bar starts with these hammer-ons and pull-offs, and then in the next bar you've got a double pull-off and then hammer-on, and that becomes a grace note in the bar following that. So it's quite tricky, particularly with this stretch, but it's not really a problem once you've worked at it for a bit, as long as you're, an intermediate player, I would say. The next section, which needs a bit of technical thought, is the end of this section. So the section I've played is developed a little bit, and then it finishes with this figure. So it's a trill, and I consulted with Jim about this, and in the end we decided that we would do it as a picked trill, as it were, a plucked trill, as opposed to a slurred trill. But you have that option. I mean, that's completely a matter of choice. I just felt the hardness of that, the fact that it's a piece which has got a lot of dissonance in it. It's quite mild dissonance a lot of the time, but it seemed to suit the piece to do it in that way. Now the next section is the trickiest section in the piece. It's just a descending arpeggio, and Jim's written these sequence of chords with a number times over the top. So he means to play that bar exactly by the number which is times over the top. So in this case it's 5. You play this bar 5 times, and then you move on to the next bar, which you play 5 times. Now on the face of it, it looks fairly straightforward, but then at this moment there's a speed change which does slightly complicate things, because it's about this speed. Now, it took me a while to get this, I must admit. It's 140 beats per minute, and if you think about it, if you did, say, do it as a tremolo, it sounds quite nice as a tremolo. And that's about the speed, about 140 beats a minute that you would expect a tremolo to be. But of course this is the same speed, but you're coming down 4 strings. Now actually it was when I realised the connection with the tremolo that I began to play it much better, because I was working it up with a metronome from up to about 120. I was getting to 120 without much of a problem, and then I really got stuck. I couldn't get it much faster. And then I just thought, well, it's the same speed as a tremolo. And one of the things you're taught when you're learning tremolo is always to watch out for the separation between the A finger and the P, because that's the only non-sequential part of the pattern, and that's where the gap tends to happen. So I started to think about this pattern like the tremolo. Am I making too much of a gap between the thumb here and the A finger there? And in fact, once I started to think about that, it got much better and I was able to get up to the speed. So I hope that's a helpful hint. It does take quite a lot of practice, and this is developed twice, this idea in the piece, and the second time the chords are a little bit harder as well. So your right hand certainly needs to feel very comfortable. There's a nice central section which sounds like this. The only difficulty about this section is that you really need to do all of it under a full bar. So it's a little bit of a stamina test. So I'm just going to finish by playing the last few bars of the piece. So hopefully you will end up with a fair idea of what the piece sounds like and what's involved in it technically. And I hope, like me, you find it a very, very attractive piece, which is part of a really super, well-written suite for ukulele.